Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest VEED webinar. We can see a few of you there in the chat. We're going to give everyone a minute or two just to join, but please do say hello in the comments while we're waiting and give us a few reactions just so we know who's on the line. Let us know who you are and where you are. I'm Leila Woodington and I am CMO of VEED. And for those of you that don't know VEED, we are an AI-powered video creation platform that lets anybody basically, without any practical skills in video editing or complex software, make great-looking video. And an easier way to say that, and what a lot of our customers say, is that we're a bit like Canva, but for video. And one of the most common use cases we see is personal branding, actually, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. And we kind of talk to a lot of people and often find that it's seen as something a bit performative or cringeworthy, especially when video is involved, especially for women, but not just for women. And so we spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people, helping them figure out how to get more comfortable on camera, what personal brand actually means for them, and what the tools are that are available to help actually build a personal brand, because we believe, and lots of others do, that when it's done well, with intention, your personal brand becomes a super powerful tool for connection, leadership, and growth. And I'm really thrilled to be joined by someone who lives and breathes the power of personal branding and can tell us a thing or two about it. And this is her third event of the day, so she's raced across town in the heat to join us. So thank you so much, Nishma. I'll do a quick introduction and then we can get stuck in. But Nishma Robb is the founder of Glittersphere, which is a platform that's helping people own their story and build personal brands that drive impact. And before that, she was Senior Director of Brand and Reputation Marketing at Google, where she spent, I think, over 10 years. And she's actually spent over 30 years, I know you can't tell from looking at her, leading bold campaigns, backing breakthrough talent, and advocating for visibility and reinvention, especially for women in tech and leadership. And she is someone who definitely knows what it means to show up with both authenticity and spark, or maybe I should say sparkle, looking at the amazing outfit and background. But yeah, with a career spanning everything from global marketing to cultural movements, Nishma is now focused on helping others tell their stories in a way that connects and converts. So quick bit of housekeeping. We're going to have a bit of a natter, Nishma and I, for 20-25 minutes. Then Kim from our team is going to give you a quick 7 to 10 minute practical kind of demonstration of how you can actually put some of the things we talk about into practice. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So do jump in the comments and we'll try and get through as many as we can. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, Nishma. Let's kind of start. Like, you've built such a powerful personal brand. You know, I go to lots of different events and connect to lots of people on LinkedIn. Everybody knows you sort of in our industry. But I imagine, you know, there were times when that didn't come super easily and it didn't feel comfortable. So yeah, I'd love to start with, like, have you ever felt the fear or discomfort so many of us feel when we're putting ourselves out there?
Oh God, yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm slightly embarrassed. I'm sorry for the fan. A little bit of sweaty kind of running across town to be here. Gosh, you know, it's so funny because sometimes I look back at my life in terms of how hidden. So the things I now talk to other people to encourage them to step out the shadows and do it. I think that was me, like, entirely. So it was either, you know, feeling that I had to make myself a bit smaller. You know, certainly early stages of my career, I was often the only woman, particularly in certain areas, or even if you weren't the only woman, certainly you're only, you know, someone who's kind of unapologetically likes a bit of humor or whatever it was. It just felt like being constantly edited. And so I almost like didn't have a personal brand because almost I didn't know who I was. And I think I've carried and wore so many different masks at so many different stages of my career. So not just, you know, younger years, but I think probably when I became a mum or when I moved businesses. I think it's a big change. Whenever you move into a new business, you're finding your identity again. And I think each one of those, I probably, you know, yes, it's a moment of reinvention, but I think you also kind of go a little bit smaller and hide. And some of that, I think, without a doubt, is about how welcoming or comfortable it is to be able to be yourself. You know that thing of going, oh, I better not say that now, or I better not wear that now for fear of judgment. And so I think for me, particularly in my latter part of my career, when I was at Google, I was there for 10 years. I think I just hit a point where I was like, I can't wait to be invited in rooms. And maybe that's a curiosity, maybe it was just I was keen to do things. I would just really get myself into those rooms. You know, I stopped waiting for someone to come and kind of almost go, here you go, come and do that. And I think natural curiosity and that did it. And it wasn't an intentional thing of building a personal brand. And we didn't really talk about it before. Like, it's such a thing for the last few years, but you always had a reputation. If your reputation is someone who was curious, who turned up, you're consistent, you know, you could have good conversation. It was, you know, it wasn't transactional and all those things, the little things that really make up your personal brand. That's effectively what I did. But yes, I spent a long time trying to be either someone different or trying to hide or trying to just make myself smaller. You know, so much of my life, and I don't think it maybe is a color thing, maybe it was being South Asian or whatever. I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to stand out. You know, it says the woman who stands on a platform at 9 o'clock in the morning in head to toe sequins now. I can't believe that, because there was a lot of my life I just wanted to hide.
Yeah. And I think, you know, almost personal branding has a bit of a personal branding problem, because people associate it with like being something other than actually just building your reputation. So I think actually kind of framing it as just that, as like your reputation is something that's obviously important to you. Why would you not care about it? And why would you not invest in it? Yeah, I'd love to know that sort of notion of fitting in a corporate world really resonates with me, having spent a long time at similar companies to Google. But I'm really curious, was there like a particular moment that you felt a shift in your mindset from sort of feeling awkward about it or cringe about showing up and being who you are? Or was it a gradual thing? You sort of said it wasn't an intentional thing.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a slow, gradual process. But then there was a kind of a more final, you know, moment of like, no, this is, you know, absolutely going to kind of just pull away and be kind of push the boundaries of really being myself. But I think the kind of slow piece is always like what I encourage a lot of people to do. You know, not everyone wants to make that leap. So it's almost like, what can you play with? What can you try? And it doesn't have to be always like, I've got to be on stage, or I've got to be, there's so many things that build your reputation, even just how you turn up in the office every day or in a meeting, or how you write your emails. You know, I remember starting to write my emails with a little bit more quirk. Actually, I still remember the first time I really probably pushed it was before it became way cringe, she says. I used to love writing really creative out of office moments. Yeah, Nish was off to find the mermaids, you know, blah blah blah. And of course, because you think no one's going to read it because they think someone's out of office, but then people start to read it and they're going, oh my god, we love you, and it almost became something people kind of look forward to. So I thought, oh, actually, here's a way I can bring a bit more personality into what feels very grey and boring. And then I started to test that a little bit more in emails, you know, just like, can you add a bit more cheek in that? And then in meetings, as I felt more comfortable, I would definitely be more expressive. So I think there's definitely kind of a slow, gradual process. But then I did hit a point, and it was partly frustration and partly not wanting to miss opportunity. And we've both worked in very similar environments that, you know, it's not necessarily the bad will of people. Maybe it's just the layered organizations, but you get to a point of being really frustrated where you go, why? And I mean we, and I genuinely we, it wasn't just about myself, why are we not making more progress? And I say that around diversity, it might have been about campaigns, it might have been culture, whatever. You just hit a point and you go, I don't get it, because there's lots of bright and brilliant people who really give a shit in why we're not making progress.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point where I started to realize that I can't change all the systems. Yep. I can try and influence to a point, and if I really, really want to drive change, I have to step out of it, or I've got to do things differently. And actually, that's when I probably push myself even more to get out and about and build those networks and be more strategic. I think until then, I wasn't strategic. I was just sort of following a serendipitous instinct of that's interesting, that's there, and that. And then there was a point where I was like, actually, no, I need to be more strategic about this. And probably much like I would build marketing thing, I was more like, I need to go there, I need to influence this, and this is what I do. And not in a transactional way. There was always like a heart and emotion there, but it was with intention.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of notion of like, even those small things like the email signature can be, you've towards building it right up to things that are much bigger. And
I don't know if anyone ever gets over the cringe though, Leila, to your point. I mean, my children definitely think I'm like massively cringe, you know, all the time, but I just have to appear and I'm cringe. But I think in a workplace, it's fun, isn't it? I don't know if it's a generational thing or not, or was it us all watching, you know, loads of series of The Office or whatever it was. There was a kind of a definition of cringe that evolved. That I don't think it was always there. Maybe it's popular culture kind of made us more obvious of what was really cringy and what wasn't. Because then I think there was loads of things that I was probably, you know, massively probably happy about things when I got to Google, and then, you know, you'd understand the Americans definitely had a very different way to express themselves to the Brits, and then you'd go, oh my god, that's really cringe, and there, and I find it really interesting, and I probably now am much more playful about cringe, that I think being cringe is actually quite good.
There's probably a whole webinar on cringe, actually, and cringe. I think that
actually, someone said to me the other day, we should develop like an anti-cringe academy. I was like, well,
love that. But it is definitely, I mean, when we talk to, obviously we talk to lots of people about making video, and generally the sort of conversation goes something like, I know video is really important, I want to make more video, but I just find it so like soul destroying and cringe. So I think just kind of getting past that, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But let's actually start with a bit more about Glittersphere, because I think lots of people on here will have heard of it, others won't have. So can you tell us that was kind of the thing that you decided after changes at Google, that's the moment this all led you to? Tell us a bit about Glittersphere.
So if I'm allowed to say it, when I had my, what I call, when I actually, my necklace even says, I had my fuck it moment.
Yeah.
And I think it was a combination of hitting a milestone birthday. You know, you get to 50 and you kind of go, do I want to do this for another decade? But for me, it was much more around, it wasn't just the kind of legacy piece. It was actually like, and it was the best bit of advice I had from a friend of mine who said, you know, go away and write this career bucket list. And imagine, I was like, what? And I went away and wrote this list and came back and looked at it with her. And she said, you know, I looked at it and was like, I'm not going to do a lot of those things where I was. And there's that sense of going, well, I want to leave that behind because I want to go and chase some of these dreams.
Yep.
But at the heart of it, I'd spent so much of my career and myself, my own reflection of me, having seen women who weren't stepping into the spotlight. And it's that observation when lots of people would say to me, and again, not hearing or thinking of it, someone would go, you've got a really good brand, or you've got a really distinctive brand. And that was the point where I was thinking, okay, I've spent years helping businesses grow their brands.
Yeah.
Hadn't necessarily thought about my own, but realized the power and the opportunity to do that for others. And so for me, at the heart of it was going, can I do something to help other women and other people to really grow their personal brand, to achieve financial freedom? And that comes right back to the heart of like why I want to do it, is financial freedom gives you choice. So the Glittersphere is a community, it's a membership community and a platform really for women to come and be part of, who are probably on their reinvention journey at different stages. You know, they could be senior, they could be a founder, a creator, lots of creatives in it as well. They're on a reinvention journey of some kind, whether it's within a role, whether it's out of a job, whatever it might be. And that piece around actually finding the confidence to be able to find and discover their story, but also learn how to tell it. Yeah. So I just wanted to have a bit more fun, you know, like corporate life is really fucking boring. So I decided to call it Glittersphere because I like glitter and I like sequins, I like music. And I often describe Glittersphere as my ambition for it is to be like TEDx meets Studio 54. So it has the fun and the irreverence of Studio 54 and the years of disco, but it has the seriousness of TEDx, because there's something powerful. At the minute you tell your story, you unlock something in someone else and you create an opportunity for them to also communicate to you. So that's, Glittersphere. It's early days. We're still building it. I have a lovely group of founding members. And the best thing about it is there's women in there who just want to, like, are feeling vulnerable and honest to share their story with each other.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to the questions later, but I'm seeing some questions that are sort of nodding to like, how do you find people to give you good feedback and help you on sort of this journey? So we can cover some of that in a bit. But as part of what you do with Glittersphere, there's this phrase that you've coined about the other AI. Obviously, we're going to talk about AI. You know, we're an AI company, and it wouldn't be a marketing webinar without some talk about it. But can you talk a bit about the other AI, which you call kind of authentic intelligence?
So you're right. Look, you know, I'm like you, big fan of AI. Always have been. I spent my last few years at Google working a lot on AI as well. You know, I'm a huge advocate of the adoption and use of it. But I think also one of my observations in that time, and it's you know, you can stand back and look at it. You know, the automation and the acceleration of the way that we will do things is, you know, whether it's pattern dependent or how we do this, is actually almost kind of counterintuitive to what is really authentic. So it comes back to that thing of, if you think for years, we used to say to everyone, like, fake it till you make it. And it felt right, but actually fake it till you make it's really hard, because if you're faking it, it's that mask carrying. But the reality is, in a world that, you know, an AI is about pattern recognition, in a world that becomes more, I suppose, predictable in some ways, how do you stand out? And actually, it was that recognition that the greatest AI is actually within us, which is that authentic intelligence. And we use authenticity probably, you know, a little bit bandied a bit too much at times. But what it really means is each one of us in our own personal lives will go on a journey of authenticity and discovery. Who you are when you're younger is not the same person as you're older, or at different stages of your life. You're going to move through who you actually are. But the beauty of that is what the thing that makes you stand out. So in the future, and maybe not that far away, jobs won't be necessarily given or distributed on the basis of your capability. It's not what you do. It'll be about how you do it and what your character is. So tapping into that authenticity and understanding how you shape it and align your values with your life and your story is the release. I've personally found it really therapeutic. My point is always to people to say, when I shed those masks and I had that bucket moment, it's because it was probably the first moment I really, truly embraced who I was in an unapologetic fashion. And I do excuse the things I think may not be perfect. I'm very honest about the stuff I know and I don't know, because that makes me human. And so it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? In a world that's more artificial and more not human, you want to lean into things that's more human. And that's not because I always stress, not because I don't believe in AI. I think it's about the combination of the two. And I really think that's where the magic. I think actually I can quote this because I think it makes it sound fabulous. But Demis has this from DeepMind, who obviously is like the godfather of AI, always talks about this point of saying, with the human aspect of our story, of who we are, is so critical, not just the development, but the application of it. So if you want to build your story and be known for who you are, you've got to figure out who you are and do a bit of that work first yourself.
Yeah, and as marketers, obviously, when we're working brand side, you spend lots of time thinking about what makes you different. How can you differentiate from everyone else? And as a sort of individual, it's your personal story is the thing that differentiates you from. Oops, sorry, I think my microphone.
I think also that personal story bit is really funny, because sometimes I get people go, but I haven't climbed Everest, or I didn't have like hardship and sadness. And I always say to people, it's not about the extreme of the story. Actually, it's about whatever the little nuance of your story is. I was talking to someone recently who said, I just don't know what I would share. And she'd made the big move out of London in COVID. Now she's making the move back into London. And I said, there's a story in itself, because the reason why you tell that, and we tell those stories to build connection, to build trust. And that's how, whether it's business, whatever else, that's how communities and society kind of evolves through connection and trust. That happens when you're revealing a bit of you and somebody else looks at it, oh, actually. And I said to her, if you were to tell people a little bit more about that, and it could be with the purpose of going, that's what makes me a really great leader, because I'm having to deal with resilience and change, whatever it may be. But actually, you give agency to other people who might be really struggling with those decisions about moving in and out. And so I'm a big believer of the fact that, look, we've had stories since the beginning of time. We've sometimes abandoned them a little bit in favor of efficiency or effectiveness, or, being a little bit too bland. I think we're kind of coming back into an era of magic and that sense of unique perspectives from each person's story.
Yeah, last time we did a talk together around International Women's Day, you talked about how it's sort of the thing that makes you memorable as well, and how important that memorability is, which I think is totally true. Like when I think about over the years, people I've met, it'll be like an anecdote that I remember, not their resume or anything in particular. It's those little individual stories. You kind of touched on this point. I think a lot of us here inevitably love AI. We're working with it every day. We're using ChatGPT and other tools in like more and more incredible ways. But also we're obviously seeing there's a lot of this kind of AI generated sludge out there, like low effort, low thought, high volume. How do you sort of, with the people that you're working with, recommend that creators and other people can use AI to elevate their voice and not kind of erase it by the machine?
Yeah. So, I think we all have to go through a bit of a journey of that. I definitely did as well. And when you think, I suppose, the first time you use it is quite magical. And you go, oh, great. It's great. I've put in my thoughts. It's come out in expression. You do it until, LinkedIn being probably the worst of this. You go in and you just think, is there anyone there? Or is it just loads of robots talking to each other? And I think that's the bit that you have to learn how to use that tool, and learn that the tool augments what you say. So what I say to a lot of people, and what I've learned, and this is genuinely like how I have gone through this journey of thinking about how do I make sure that I'm using ChatGPT to enhance what I say rather than replace it, is often I do write as I talk, right or wrongly. But I kind of come back to that thing of, if I read it out, and I was saying it to someone in the pub or somewhere, if it doesn't sound normal, it isn't. And I think that you can see the content that sounds way more human, way more as you would do. It's not just about imperfections, it's about the tone and the style. That's great.
Yeah.
writing is always going to be harder in this space. You know, I think that's why we're seeing such this kind of, you know, sludge, as you said. It's a really good word for it. There's so much sludge there because, you know, you have to be quite a good writer to be able to kind of get that human expression piece across, which I know we're going to talk about in a moment. Video is a brilliant way, which is why I encourage people to do it. So when I work with creators, I do say to them, and leaders, we kind of get to the bare bones of the story, you know, lots of story construction that there's loads of great information about how to do. And then when you look at using ChatGPT, it's about giving personas and really clear instructions. So sometimes it's about write in this style, or write as that person would, or write, you know, in really, you know, lots of people talk about writing in a Hemingway style because it's so simple. But it is, you've got to give it a reference point to do it. But I always start with, I write a big splurge as me, and then I put it in, and then I shape it. And it's probably about 3 or 4 iterations before I'm comfortable with what I have. But the bit that kills me is AI robot comments. Oh, like you just can't. I now actually really mischievously now want to mess with the robots, because I now kind of want to write really cheeky things back to the robots to see what comes back.
Yeah.
Just think I could have this amazing kind of bit play.
Yeah, I think everyone inevitably is frustrated with those. I think the platforms are working to get rid of them, but yeah, they're definitely annoying. I think you talked about sort of almost brain dumping as you, and then kind of using a tool to thought spar with until you get to an output you're good at. Another thing I think that we certainly encourage people to do is the tools are only as good as the information you give them, right? So the more feedback you can give it, like I'm often telling ChatGPT, that's too cringe, or like that's, you know, less corporate, or a bit more humor, just because it learns that's kind of your style, and feeding in obviously previous posts that you've written maybe pre-AI that have done well, all of that kind of stuff, I think.
And also pointing, I find as well, so I do that, I think that's brilliant. You're right. I mean, it's only going to be as good as what you tell it. I also like to give it writing references. So if I like, if I really admire somebody who I think is really relatable, or whether they write or something, I try and give some of those references as well, so that they understand, I think that's brilliant. I think that feels really human, or a conversation I'd have, because, you know, but then sometimes you do get a bit of a spat with GPT, because every now and then it does kind of get a little bit, gets a bit feisty with me, and I'm a bit like, no, and I'm like, no, that's really corporate.
I think your first point about writing as you speak and how you'd say it to somebody is like super valuable, and it's really easy to forget. You try and kind of, you know, make sure the grammar is great and everything else, and you actually start to lose, like, I wouldn't speak like that, I wouldn't say it on a stage. And that is maybe a good segue actually into some video related topics, because that's obviously really important when you're writing a script for a video, that you don't write it as a, you know, machine would. It needs to sound like a real human, and how you would say it down the pub, as you said. But you I don't know if it's actually launched yet, or it's going to launch, but a video series called Fuck It.
My Fuck It video series. Well, actually, we spoke earlier this year, as you said, on International Women's Day. We had a brilliant conversation, and we talked about, actually, it's really difficult. I have personally found it a bit of a hurdle to overcome to start filming myself. And I said, it's really bizarre. I don't understand it. I'm really comfortable getting on any stages, in a room, not a problem. Video, I don't know what happens to me. It's almost like, as soon as you turn that camera on, I turn into a newsreader, and I'm like a robot, and I'm like, hello, this is Nishma. You know, and I could never put that in the world, because it's not even me. And I was trying to think, like, psychologically, what the hell happens to me when this is doing it? So you're right, some of it's scripting, some of it's been a bit of a kind of psychological step across a threshold of fear. And what I found was, how I've started to do this was, you know, using VEED, because I love it, having the auto cue in there. And I was talking to somebody about this, and she said, she gave me this tip, so I'm sharing her tip with you, is she said, I put the camera on and I start talking, and I do what you do, Nish, where you start to go, like, freeze into like newsreader mode. And then in like a minute or so in, you just relax and you start having a chat like you do. And so she says, I basically start the video edit from that point. So when I write a script, I'm almost kind of intentionally knowing that the first bit I'm writing, or the first bit I'm constructing to do that, I'm not going to use. I'm going to bin it. And actually, I was like, let me try, let me see if this works. And it really works, because I found that, you know, even though I know that's what I'm doing, it helps me kind of warm up. And then once I'm on the go, then I'm off. So that was the first thing. The Fuck It series was true to, like, my belief of trying to help people think about their moment of reinvention. And it is that thing. I know Mel Robbins has her, like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is brilliant. You know, get yourself out of that moment of fear. Jay, we all forgot his surname. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was thinking, actually, how many times in my life when I've wanted to step over that threshold of fear, I just go, fuck it. I'm just going to go for it. That's that moment of spark to do it. So I decided that not only would I want to put myself on camera, because I think that it's so hard to put into words the moment and expression of that fuck it moment. Like, because when you say it to someone and they know and recognize it in themselves, there's a physical expression that goes with their words. And I was like, I want to capture that on video. I can't just do this in writing or a carousel or whatever. So I got one of these like little video cameras. I actually have a really lovely bedazzled, and I'll find it here in a moment, because like, why not? If you're gonna go out and make your own series, let's have a really cute little kind of microphone thing. So I bedazzled my own little microphone thing. And I went out and I started to events or celebrities or people would just go out and say, tell me a moment when you had your fuck it moment in life, that point of reinvention, or where you would like it to be. And every single time, the moment of expression when they say it, because it's like a physical thing. So they could be talking normally like, yeah, I did this at work. And then I was like, fuck it. And I went and did that. And it's like you could see the step change. So I wanted to create a video short series around that. And so I do that and use VEED to help me get it into the world. So it's not out yet. We're still amassing our videos, but I'm very excited about it.
Oh yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. And people can, follow Nishma on socials, on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm sure you'll be posting it all there. And I bet you got some good content in Cannes last week.
Yeah, some of it's not useful, but
after a certain time, I'm sure it becomes less.
You know what's lovely about it is actually the breadth of the stories. I assumed everyone's fuck it moment would be the usual, like I changed career and that. What's been incredible, and I think this also comes back to personal brand. I think I have spent a long time building a personal brand that I wanted to demonstrate that relatability, or, I'm very vulnerable, and because I want to give other people that space too. And I'm a big believer of, you never know what's happening behind the screen, the face, whatever. So showing compassion to others is really important, and inviting that. So sometimes when I've been out and about with the mic, people have told me things that have really floored me. And I think that's the beauty of a personal brand and a storytelling approach that allows you to build connection that I would never have otherwise done. I would have got really dry answers. And I think that's been the richness to it.
Yeah. And I think I'm certain like people on this call will find it very reassuring that somebody who's been on, thousands of people in the audience stages would still have those same thoughts when getting on camera and kind of found a way to get past that hurdle. I am going to close this bit. I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions. Give me short kind of answers. The first thing that kind of comes into your head, trying to make these bits quite practical before we get into the demo. What are like the top two elements in your opinion of like making a good story? What are the things you think about?
Emotion. So like whether it is fear, anger, love, excitement, hilarious, there's got to be a sense of emotion in that story. And actually, the best thing is we learned it as kids. I still do it now, beginning, middle and end. I always tie the beginning to the end, and we forget some of those simple story structures. But I always when I look at a story, I go, did I learn something from it? And did it make me feel something? Those are, I think, the two most important gifts in a story.
Yeah, simplicity, I think, is something we definitely overlook in some of the basics. What's one simple habit or ritual that's helped you show up consistently online? Because it takes a lot of time.
Oh my God. So I had to do a bit of an accountability thing. I did a writing course last year because I'd probably spent most of my life telling myself I couldn't write, which is a nonsensical thing. We do these things to ourselves. I don't know why. And I did that. As part of that, I had to commit to doing 30 days of writing. And I chose to do that on LinkedIn. And they're only little posts and proper tumbleweed. No one cared that I even wrote anything. But what it did is it taught me not just the kind of practice of turning up every day to do it, but I started to learn systems. Yeah. And even now I'm still evolving it. But I think for me now the consistency is, and the big shift for me wanting to be there, it's almost quite addictive to be there, was not about, I just don't care about the likes. And I'm not saying that just because I'm saying it. I get so much joy when I get a little message from someone, or somebody writes something really beautiful in the comments that's about a reflection, or thank you for made me feel seen, or whatever it is. Yeah. And that's what makes me turn up every day and makes me want to share the things I do. And sometimes I'm like, no one really cares about this, but it doesn't matter. I feel good writing it. It's almost a bit of therapy for me. But yet I suppose my addiction to it is actually knowing how it's helping other people to tell their stories. And the other thing, sorry, just on that, I know it's a quick answer, was my practice that I tell everyone, and I do it, you don't go and run a marathon straight away, you go into training. If you want to start creating content, whether it's video or written or wherever it is I spend a lot of time, and I tell everyone to do it, spend a good few weeks just commenting on other people's. Read and observe, curate your feed, watch what's great, see what you like, what moves you. And that's a really great way to kind of lead you into how you build your content.
Yeah, and I think, to your point earlier about lifting people up, like people on this webinar, don't overlook the power of just a little like or a comment to support somebody. They're doing something and kind of lift them up and tell them good job, so they come back and do it again. It's like takes less than 2 seconds and it can have such a powerful impact. Last one, there's lots of talk about these prompts and deep research and all these sorts of things with AI, but I want to ask you, what's one fun or surprising way that you use AI in your personal life?
Well, you know what I have to say, and I'm sure you've all tried it. I love doing the kind of voice prompting with ChatGPT. So I was in that classic situation where I was trying to get somewhere, running out of time, and I had to opt to drive rather than get the train. And I was really annoyed about it because I'd obviously in my head planned to do all these things on the train. So I was like, oh, sorry, I'm going to have to just speak to ChatGPT. And he's got a very smooth tone, my one. So he's like, hey, Nishma, what do you need to do? Anyway, I have now, my big kind of transformation in life for how I use it is where I used to write loads of things in notes. I now voice note it, not voice note it, I have a conversation with ChatGPT, which is brilliant, because at the end of the week, I then go, can you just kind of play back or organize the things I've said to you? I'd never remember those things and they'd be lost in my notes. So that's been a bit of a transformation about how I use it. And I think that's definitely a way forward. And the fact that they just say, like, the ChatGPT says such nice things to you. I love all that. I'm like, I don't care that someone's programmed it that way, but if they want to tell me, hey, Nishma, you're great today, I'm like, boom, do it. Lovely.
Everyone's favorite hype man or woman, ChatGPT. If you're not using voice yet, definitely experiment with it because it is a game changer. I would fully agree with that. Listen, Nishma, I could keep chatting to you all day, but we're going to now hand over to Kim, who is on the marketing team at VEED. She's going to do a demo that basically will help you look at some practical ways you can actually make some of the types of videos Nishma has talked about. And then Nishma and I will jump back on to answer some questions. So over to you, Kim.
Cool. Thanks very much, Leila. Thanks very much, Nishma. I can definitely relate. When I press record, I go into presenter mode. But hopefully when I'm doing webinars, I'm slightly more free flowing and natural. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up my VEED screen and hopefully you can all see it okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can, or some emoji love. Awesome. Perfect. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Cool. So once you're inside the VEED workspace, there's two kind of main things I want to touch on today, particularly around videos and your personal brand. So Nishma very kindly queued me up beautifully to show you guys this recorder button, top right-hand side. You can record with your camera, and if you are stuck for that kind of free-flowing energy and that like authentic storytelling, I've used this wonderful little button here to write some scripts for me. So you can literally write in a prompt. I've done ADHD in the workplace before. And then you can even ask AI to go one step further and make it professional, funny, informative, or creative. And you will literally have a script that pops up here. You just press play and it will read it like a newsreader. You can move this wonderful button around as well. You can change the opacity of it, and you can even slow it down or speed it up. If you're a quick talker like me, and I always try and remember to calm down and slow down a little bit, you can read it nice and slowly or quickly, and you can speed it up or slow it down in the editor. Cool. So that's a little bit about recording yourself if you've not got a video to go into VEED. However, in true Blue Peter style, I've got one here. Here's one I made earlier. And this was a video I created for a training session that I'm working on at the moment. And what you basically do is you upload it onto VEED. So you can upload any type of videos. I know we had a question in the chat earlier. Here, you just literally upload, and you can upload it from your computer. I often film on my phone. Here's a tip for you, and airdrop it to my Mac if you're fortunate enough to be using a Mac like we do here. So you can upload videos. You can also use AI to generate a video for you from an AI perspective. And that will work its magic too if you need alternative B-roll. And we've even got a button down here, which is new this week, create B-roll images based on what you're talking about in the video, which is mind-blowing stuff. But I'm going to just pull it back a second and show you this wonderful button here. We've got edit with script. So click on this and it will basically give you the entire transcript of the video itself that you've recorded. Now, if you make any mistakes or there's some long silences like here, I'm actually looking at the screen to help me remember what I've got coming next lines wise. You can use magic tools and remove any long or short silences. So hopefully you can see here, any short silences will be removed or long silences. You can do that. But also, great thing about edit with script, if you can edit a Word document, you can now edit a video. So say, for example, I didn't like this sentence. I just highlight it, click remove, and hopefully you saw at the bottom down here in the timeline, it cut that bit out. Now I am going to remove all the silences. I'm going to get rid of the long and the short. Did you see that at the bottom? Now look how much time I've saved across the timeline. Just super quickly, if you've never even been inside VEED before, this is your canvas and you can stretch this up and down. And this is your timeline across the bottom. You can get incredibly granular. So if you zoom right in, you can work on a particular point. And if you want to go back to doing things manually in terms of editing, you can split, cut bits out, etc. And this button here, if you ever get lost, is fit. It'll just bring everything back into the timeline. Now, again, we're cloud-based, so everything is saved automatically. If you ever make a mistake, just click this lovely little button up here, undo, and it will undo the last thing that you did. And you can keep undoing if you want to. Magic, right? Now then, the important part, the branding part. Let's make this look snazzy. So brand kit top left, you can upload your own brand kit. So logos, videos, intro, outros, if you're lucky enough to have them. Down here, we've got our corporate fonts and logos, etc. So I'm going to ping on a VEED logo. So you can just click and there it goes. I don't know if it looks a bit strange because I've already got the VEED actual real light, but I'm going to pop that up there. Now, because my cursor was down here, I'm just checking on time, was in the middle of the video, which was a mistake. I'm just going to drag and drop the VEED logo and you can stretch it to the entire length of the video. Ooh, let's go fit, else I'll be there for days. Cool. And then we've got video here. So sorry, brand kit here. I want to add an outro, a 16:9. And again, that's going to go where the cursor is here. And you can't see it. Just need to stretch that up. And everything is drag and drop. Everything's so magnetic. I've never edited videos before I worked at VEED. And now I find it pretty easy. Cool. So we've got that. Now I want to add some audio as well. We've got so much stock music and so many stock videos actually here that you can use. So view all. You can pop in here. This is all royalty free, which is amazing. And then stock music, hopefully it won't play too loud. Find a song that you like. We're just going to add that in. And you've got a song in there as well to make it, again, a little bit more your vibe, a little bit more on brand. Cool, fit, and amazing. Then one last thing I'm going to do here with this video is we've got the edit with script, but now I want the subtitles. So I'm going to subtitle the entire video and show you how to translate it quickly too, keeping an eye on the time. I reckon I've probably got another couple of minutes. Fab. So let's have a look. So this is our corporate logos, fonts, and for subtitles. Amazing. So they've popped up as well. And if for whatever reason you need to edit the subtitles, you can on the left-hand side here. So if a word has got low confidence, you just mark it as correct. Fab. Now, if you're happy with all of that, it all looks great, but you still want to translate it, you can. We can have a multitude of languages. I think we support 150 plus languages, which is great. And you just click and you've got it translated, whoosh, instantly with the different subs. So if you want to reach a wider audience, you can do that. You can also dub your video as well. So for example, you were happy with the video, you can do AI dubbing and dub into either your voice, and that's got about 29 languages to dub your voice, or you can even choose a different voiceover if you wish. One last thing I want to show you as well, settings here. Here you can resize it for social media if you wish. So for example, let's go, I want to turn this into an Instagram reel. It will show you the safe zones as well. Now, once you've duplicated and resized it, hopefully it will stay on the same screen for me. And you can open the project in another tab. I'm not going to do that now. Or you can just do it manually and go here to Instagram Reel, and it will even show you the safe zones, which is great. Now, if you're not happy with where the subtitles are, move them up. Not happy with the logo, everything's just drag and drop as if by magic. And then if you're happy with it, you download it here, export video. Always make sure it's in the highest quality possible. Export video. Here we go. Here's the VVV page where you view your project. Hopefully it will render quickly, but if not, I will blame the Wi-Fi. But you can copy the link or download it as an MP4 and post it wherever you wish. And that's the magic of VEED. Hopefully I've done you guys proud with that very quick whistle-stop tour of VEED.
Thank you so much, Kim. And I know that was really quick for everyone, but you will all get the recording, so you can actually go and kind of watch specific bits if you want to try it yourselves. But yeah, definitely would recommend going and playing around in the tool. There's so many great features in there, and we're basically shipping pretty much weekly at the moment, new things. Right, so let's get stuck into some questions. Nishma, let's start with this one from Giselle Hales. Is there a storytelling methodology that supports building an impactful narrative? I think you kind of talked about the very simple beginning, middle, and end structure. Is there any other architectures that you use personally?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved kind of like Hemingway's approach to, you know, there are, I think, 7 different types of story, and that simplicity and playing with it's really helpful. And actually, some of the things I teach my kids this as well is just on the GCSEs. It's like if you take any idea and thought and you applied it to a fairy tale, which we know so well, whether it's 3 Little Pigs or something else, you can get the same structures. And it's interesting, if you sit down and told your story, you'd look at it and go, is it a quest? Is it this? Is it that? They help. I think they really help to make sure your stories are interesting and well structured. But there's so many great resources online to do that. And I do think invest in thinking about your story structure.
Yeah, and I think from our side, obviously, we work mostly in video. I know our video team who are creating for YouTube and other channels, they use different variations of hook, you know, something that grabs attention in the first 3 seconds. Then they have some kind of pattern interrupt, which is just some way of changing things up to keep people's attention, which could be moving from head on shot to a side shot, or it could be like something unexpected coming into screen and then pay off. They may have multiple hooks as well because they're sophisticated in kind of how they do it, and they make videos every single day, but that's definitely like that basic structure.
I think that pattern interrupt's really important. The hook obviously is because you're trying to get someone to stop and pay attention, and the pattern interrupt, particularly on video, I've really loved, because I think we've got so used to seeing certain types of videos, so when they're well edited, just as Kim's just shown us, like with just that kind of, you know, evolution of the moment with the story really makes a huge difference. I love doing that.
Watch time up, definitely. If you have like moments of interest near the beginning, we definitely see that in our data.
And definitely the first few seconds, be conscious of that. Yes,
people's attention spans are short. You've only got a very small window to hook them in. Question from Noah Smith. She says, Nishma, you're fab as always. What are the telltale signs that someone's AI is showing, and how do you avoid becoming one of them?
I probably have one. So it used to be everyone would be like, oh my God, you've used an M dash, you're totally using it. I think most people have kind of got wiser to that now. For me, definitely, there are certain phrases, you know, just you wouldn't say in normal life. Like you wouldn't say, I think one of my favorite ones is, you know, they love using permission slip quite a lot. And I'm like, we don't use that. You wouldn't use that as much as often in ChatGPT text. But I think it's that readability. If you were just reading out loud, and honestly, that's the best test for anything, for your own work or someone else's. If you read it out loud, which is the biggest way to do it, you'll know, you can hear it. It's really weird. So there's that. I also think the formulaic, it'll lose some of that magic. It almost has become so sentence structure, repetitiveness there. The only thing I would say is, yes, you don't want to be communicating with robots, but I wouldn't hate on someone who's using ChatGPT. I'm really conscious of that because I don't like this kind of backlash of saying to someone, I think it's really important to show them how to educate them to get better with it. I don't like the robots responding, but I don't have much of a problem of calling out somebody out who's got, like, don't shame them. We have a problem with that. You know, women are lagging in terms of AI adoption compared to men, and part of that's cheating and stuff like this. You've got to stop that.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think that advice on just like, would you say it? Because AI seems to use quite a lot of superlatives you wouldn't use in everyday conversation. And actually there's quite good resources about like words that machines.
And the LinkedIn one's always great because you can see they do, it's so repetitive. They summarize your content because it's where the ChatGPT is thinking. Summarize your content into a sentence and there's something. Nobody does that.
No, so make sure you're adding value in the comments so people don't mistakenly think you're AI. A couple of really quick VEED questions that we can answer. One from Khaled. Do VEED provide a consultant producer who can help produce videos and charge for it? Unfortunately, we don't, but there are, as you kind of mentioned, plenty of services like Fiverr and others, and lots of amazing freelancers out there who do make videos. But I would say give it a go yourself, see what you can do. You'll find, you know, what level you can get to. And then if it's something beyond that you need, then maybe go to a freelancer. But the tools are really good now. So you might find that actually you can do it yourself using tools like VEED. All these features, this Marcus, are all these features included in the Pro plan? Yes, all of the features Kim demoed are available in our Pro plan. they'll have different limits on them depending on what it is. So like subtitles do have a certain number of minutes and so on. But if you go to our pricing page, it will show you exactly what's included in which plan. And then there was some questions I saw coming through on B-roll, but I think Kim showed you all the different ways you can use B-roll, and the generative AI stuff as well. You can actually kind of create your own B-roll or allow the system to auto generate it in one of our newest tools. So lots of different ways you can get B-roll through VEED and other places. What have we got here? Nishma, another one for you, and then one more after this. Sao Lin, I hope I said your name right. What characteristics of a successful personal brand get through all the noise of influencers that don't have the expertise?
I love that one. Such a great question. So I think first of all, and actually, because this might answer one of the other questions I saw in there, great personal brand, a little bit like good marketing, is be memorable. And that memorable might be, for me, I wear sequins. People kind of associate them with me. It's the thing, what do you want to be known for? So I want to be known for the substance and not just the sparkle. So what's the added value, the advice, the knowledge, or the connection that I'd make? And then I think the third thing is the difference. We've talked about pattern disruption or standing out. And I think those things are really, really critical in terms of how you think about your personal brand. And I've just forgotten the other bit of the question. Remind me what was again
what cuts through the noise if you're trying to sort of create content.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is, like, you see loads of leadership content. I'm just going to pick leadership as one because there's lots and lots of content and it all feels the same.
Yeah,
I keep coming back to this point around how do you stand out. So I'll give you an example. I came back from an event that lots of good people had been at a week ago, something called Cannes Lions, and everyone, I did as well initially on my plane back, had written up a report of the week. There's so much exciting, interesting things to share.
Yeah.
But before I posted, I stopped myself because I could see everyone else was doing that.
Yeah.
And instead what I did is I shared my reflection of my experience there, which was very personal to me and therefore made it unique. It was still filled with information and advice, but it became something more personal and not like everyone else's. I think as a thought leader, you have to wrap data and information with a personal perspective always.
Yeah, that's the thing that uniquely you can bring, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And we are a little bit over, but people, you will get the recording, and there were a couple of good questions. And Nishma, if you can stay on, I'll ask you the last.
Yeah, very happy to.
I thought this was a good one. This was from Giselle as well. How do you gather meaningful feedback to know how your personal brand is landing? How do you find the courage that is needed to modify yourself when it's the right thing to do? I think that's such a great question, because sometimes you put yourself out there and you wonder, would anyone tell me if this was terrible? Would anyone give me? So how do you go about having sort of trusted people?
Yeah, and also being brave enough to ask for that feedback.
Yeah.
So there is the bold of just ask for it. I saw someone do that actually in their social media post the other day, where they literally said, how would you describe me in 3 words? Which I thought was quite brave actually to do that, but it's a good way to do it. I think one of the key things I do, and I talk about being in the comments, is in whatever platform or wherever it is, or if you're in a networking thing, those bits of the conversation are a really good indicator of what have they understood and taken away about your personal brand. And I'll give you an example. As I've tried to reinvent from a corporate career to an entrepreneurial career, I had to make a shift of my brand. Your core values and who you are and your style and that all stay the same. But I had to kind of rewire people's brains about what they would associate me with. And I had to test if that was working. And there was definitely a period of time where it wasn't, and it felt very confused. And the way I knew that was in the time, if I would ask a question, the response I was getting back, or the way that someone would introduce me, or the way that even they would comment on my work was of a different version. And I think that's a way to test it. But I do think, asking boldly and outrightly, I go back and watch everything I do, and with a great level of criticism. I think this is quite a popular trick, and I do it. I definitely do it on video, which is where I've really learned to do it. I watch it with no sound, no sound initially, so I'm just watching my movements. Then I do it where I turn off the video and I just listen to it, and then I obviously put the two together. And what that does is you really get a sense of how you perform and how the clarity of your personal brand. And then I think it's about really how do people receive you. It's like when you walk into a room, it's not always going to happen, but if you're in a situation, I always notice how somebody might, what do they say to me?
Yeah.
So the big shift for me was when people said, oh my God, I really love that you've done that. It took me a long time to get to that point. Nothing happens overnight.
You have to keep going. You talk about a tumbleweed. I think you've got to just get through that tumbleweed at the beginning until you find.
And have some kind of shared people that you ask. I had a group of friends who I said, look, this is what I'm going to do. And they kind of eye rolled and was like, well, but actually it helped because they weren't as vested in it as I was, but I was able to go back and ask them.
Yeah, I think asking the most eye-rolly of your friends is actually quite a good filter, but proactively actually asking the question, saying, I've done this thing, I've made a video, I can see 3 things that I think I could do better. Is there anything else that you'd say? And sometimes they actually, people you'll find say that they like the thing that you think isn't great. Keep that. And so it's, I think it's, it seems obvious, but specifically ask for feedback and open yourself up for it, I think is a really good shout.
And could be your own like best critic, not worst critic.
Yeah, absolutely. You get better at spotting things as well, the more you do, don't you? One last one. We have got lots of questions. We'll try and follow up on these later if we can, but just mindful of time. What is a good content workflow? And should you focus on one channel first, or is it best to do different platforms if you can do it consistently? And is it okay to cross? So it's 3 questions actually, but we'll get through them. Is it okay to post the same content cross-platform?
So it's such a great question, because there's been lots of talk about don't mortgage yourself into one platform. But my thought on this is it's really hard to focus on more than one. I think what actually is a better way to think of this is then how I've now adopted it. So I had multiple platforms. I then started to focus on LinkedIn. I continue to focus on LinkedIn. My evolution of my behavior there, however, has now pivoted to focusing on my content creation. So now I've now started to think a little bit more around not just my content plan and the types of content I want to play and where I might place it. I'm still focusing on LinkedIn, but I'm now starting to build thought. For example, my video series will go onto YouTube. I'm building a podcast network and that'll go into different places, but they all start from one place of content creation. I'm not a big believer of applying your content elsewhere. I think each platform has its nuance, and it's good to make sure your content is created for that. Some of the short form videos you can get away with, but I think per platform, I think if you're really going to do it, build one first and really establish yourself there, because it doesn't just establish yourself on a platform, it establishes your systems for creating content. All the stuff we just said, what works, what doesn't, what you enjoy creating, that's a big part of it. There's lots of content I didn't really enjoy doing. I've loved now, having spent so long not wanting to do video, I now love doing video. I love the conversations. But you've got to go on that. So I think one platform, discover that, and then evolve your content creation to more platforms.
Yeah, don't run the marathon straight away. Start with the practice and then kind of extend. And there are lots of ways you can extend content, but I think to Nishma's point, being thoughtful about what each platform needs, what works. And it's different for brands. For brands, we often think about kind of where we want to build community and where we want to just extend surface area. So sometimes you do just want to blast things out. But I think for your personal brand, it's a little bit different, isn't it? So, well, look, we are a few minutes over. That was really interesting, Nishma, as always. Kim, thank you so much for the demo. Thank you so much for joining us, and for everybody who dialed in. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.